There's always a sense that you might be like a second-class citizen, right? This is not your place.
Meet Nicholas Fang, a Singaporean who lived in the UK for 3 years before moving back. Since then, he has been on the Singapore national team for fencing and triathlon, worked as a reporter, served as a nominated member of parliament, and launched a few successful businesses. During our chat, Nicholas shared his reasons for leaving the UK, the biggest challenges facing Singapore in the future, and his encounter with Barack Obama. I'm Max Chernov, let's go!
You studied in the UK, right? Have you ever thought to stay there, to live there?
One of the things that I really valued, and I'm not sure if people who have not lived abroad are aware, but it's no matter how long you spend in the country and how integrated and how localized you become, inevitably you are by definition still an expat. And there's always a sense that you might be like a second-class citizen, right? This is not your place. You are new here, you are visiting here. I really valued coming home in a place where you really feel like it's home for you. And having been away for a while, I think I was very, very convinced that there's so many good things about Singapore that I missed when I was not in Singapore.
What did you miss the most?
So I have to say, some parts of it is me being very spoiled, right? Having grown up in Singapore, I think efficient transport system. When I was in Seoul about a month ago, I was in Bangkok like 2 weeks ago, and traffic, of course, is always a problem. Distances are very big, and you spend a lot of time on the road, right? In the train, subway, or in the car. In Singapore, if you spend more than half an hour in a car, it's a national crisis, right? So I think I really appreciated that. The fact that you can step off the plane at Changi Airport. And I stay in the west, on the other side of the island, but within 30 minutes, I can step into my house, right? If I don't have to wait for luggage and everything like that. And the system is just that effective. I like doing business. I wouldn't say I'm a serial entrepreneur, but I started a few different companies. And the ease of setting up a company. Some people said it takes about maybe half a day to set up a company. I think just to get everything registered, maybe a couple of hours, not even half a day, right? It's easy. So I appreciate that as well. And then of course it's all the other stuff, clean, efficient, safe, good food. The fact that it's easy for us to move around to other parts of this region, it's a common complaint from Singaporeans that, there's not much to do here. It's shopping malls and movies, right? That's what people always say, or eating. But I think there are options to try a lot of different stuff if you bother to look hard enough.
Yeah, like here, fencing club.
So fencing, there's a lot of different type of activities that you just have to look a little bit. Which Singaporeans we don't, because we assume that we know everything, right? Because this is home. But at the same time, if we wanted to go to Malaysia, Bangkok, Bintan, Batam, it's also super convenient. So I missed all of that when I was away, and I'm very happy to be back here.
Hey guys, in 1 minute I'll give you a great insight into your health. Sometimes I feel tired for no reason, but I haven't known how to solve this for years. That's why I took the Circle DNA test equipped with the world's most advanced DNA technology. It covers not just lifestyle elements like an optimal diet, fitness and ancestry report, but also aspects like cancer, dementia and brain health risks. I sent them my saliva, yes, and after 18 days the results were in. Guess what? I'm Asian by a whopping 14%. That explains why I feel so good in Singapore. My love for Asia literally runs in my blood. But jokes aside, this Circle DNA reports gives me really important knowledge that I am at risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And thanks for that, I will take preventive measures as early as possible. The app not only shows analysis but also suggests improvements. For example, because I'm sensitive to carbohydrates and fats, Circle DNA suggests trying a Mediterranean diet. These recommendations significantly save time compared to doing personal research. I hope you'll try it too. Use my promo code MAX40 for a 40% discount on the premium test. Take care and stay healthy.
One of the most popular complaints, in the Western media, from foreigners who've never been to Singapore, it's like Singapore is authoritarian, or Singapore is not like real democracy. What would you say on this when you hear this, that people say it?
I think if you look at different political systems around the world, there are many different types. There are different shades of democracy. There's full, complete liberal democracy to something that's a little bit in between, and authoritarianism on the other extreme. And I think that different political systems and different ways of government offer different attributes in a country. You can have a country where there's full freedom and democracy, but a lot of other type of issues, a lot of other type of social problems. You can have systems where you have a lot of control, but then you have other ways, more orderly system that comes as a one of the trade-offs. And I think for people to make assessments, always understand that there will be trade-offs. That it is almost impossible to say I want a perfect system, full-fledged democracy, but order and stability over the long term. I can't point to any country in the world where you say it's perfect. I think the leaders of Singapore were and are very clear-eyed in terms of what is important and what are the priorities. And I think that there has been years and years, decades of experience to show that there's a certain system that will produce a certain outcome. Of course, in Singapore we have democratic elections, and people, one man, one vote, you have a chance to make your position felt, which is a lot more than what you would say in some other countries. And then there's other laws that maybe restrict us compared to a full, open, liberal Western democracy. If you ask me personally, I think I'm pretty happy with the system that we have here. It's not perfect, it's constantly being improved. But yeah, I think it's gotten us to where we are today, which is not a bad thing.
What's the biggest areas for improvement?
I was listening to our ostensibly next Prime Minister in waiting, Mr. Lawrence Wong. He gave a speech at a party conference a few weeks ago, and he said one of the areas that they want to focus on is communication. It is communicating of policy and the rationale behind decisions so that people can understand. I work in communications and media and journalism and public relations as well, and I feel that if you do not communicate something properly in today's world, with technology and social media and digital platforms and information flying around so fast, if you don't communicate something properly, it's almost as bad as doing the wrong thing, or not doing the right thing. So I do feel that when I talk to different people and friends, and they have views on certain issues, including myself, not all of us have all the information all the time to be able to make the completely correct, informed decision. Because of access to information or experience or the work that we do or the friends and the social circles that we have, quite often there is certain lack of information which impedes us from being able to say, okay, I understand why things are the way they are. For Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who's potentially most likely going to be the next Prime Minister, for him to say that we need to communicate our policies better so that people can understand why we do certain things. They may still make a decision to disagree or to feel that something is not right, but at least they do it with the full information and they can make a rational, logical thought. My biggest fear now is that we'll end up in a society where people make decisions without the full information. I always think back to when Brexit happened. The day after Brexit, the most Googled question among people in the UK was, what is Brexit? And this is the day after they voted in favour of Brexit. That to me is horrifying. Right? The political decisions and the way people decide things, that you can hope for something forever, but nothing lasts forever. But as long as people make the decision with the full information, I think that's something that everybody around the world has to keep striving for.
Yeah, there is some research like that people use in marketing. We also use the marketing. Like if you explain something, the chance that people, like, let's say, the needed call to action is done is higher than if you don't explain. There was an experiment, like, people were queuing for the scanner machine to scan at the office. And then, like, they did, like, two tests. Like, someone was trying to get in front of the queue and saying, can I do it because I'm in a hurry? And someone was trying to do the same, but explaining, I need to do it because, like, my boss, blah, 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 blah. And actually conversion to, like, let him go was higher. Yeah, when you explain. So it's it's super important.
Yeah, I think so. But that's a great example because in communications, a lot of it is about telling a story. So the first guy who says, I need to go, I'm in a hurry, he's indicated his need, He's indicated the motivation, but he's not told the story to anyone. So people have no connection, no sympathy, and no understanding.
Yeah.
They may be thinking, I also need to go, right? What the hell, man? Why are you more important than me? But if somebody tells a story that, I'm in trouble, I've been late like 5 times, this month, my boss is going to fire me if I'm going to be late, or, I have this report and the meeting started already, they really need this report. And people say, okay, if I were you, I'd feel terrible. I'm not in such a rush today. Okay, why don't you go in front? So that's a great aspect of communications that people don't really realize. It's not just about putting up a list and said, point number 1, point number 2, point number 3, point number 4, point number 5, which governments like to do. But you have to tell the story. And I think, politicians, some politicians around the world are very, very good at telling stories, so much so that their story becomes more important than the facts. But there are also politicians who are just good at giving facts without putting it in context, without connecting with their audience, and without getting their message really effectively across. I think for sure in Singapore we need to communicate better, but communicating better isn't just about throwing all the facts out there, but it's telling the story behind it. And I think that we should see some improvement in that area for sure in the years ahead.
I wanted to ask you about the future of Singapore. In a global conflict, Singapore normally don't take sides most of the time. And then there is a big thing is US and China tensions. And I think most of the people are worried about this, what's going to be in the future. Speaking about this, what do you think will be the role of Singapore here in the region?
When elephants fight, right, grass gets smashed. And if you think about the elephants in this region, it's US and China for sure. And Singapore is a very concerned member of the community in this region. But we don't have a lot of real power to say anything, military or otherwise, because we're just too small. I think constantly if we want a major power like the US or a major power like China to look at Singapore and says, you're kind of important, so we'll keep working with you, then this notion of staying independent and neutral is very critical. If we are pro here or pro there, then that's game over. But what would keep a small country relevant? In the past, there was a lot of respect for Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. So people respected Lee Kuan Yew because of Singapore, but they respected Singapore because of Lee Kuan Yew. I think current Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has a lot of that kind of goodwill and respect around the world too. But as we transition into the next generation 4G leadership, then for sure we'll hope that they can rise to a certain level as well. I think the leadership of the country will be quite important in terms of staying relevant, respected, needed by the rest of the world. So those are some of the areas that potentially we should certainly keep our fingers crossed for. Official position is political, but it's also practical, right? It's because what can Singapore offer? We don't have oil, we don't have agriculture, we don't have massive resources that, precious metals, diamonds, we don't have anything to offer that. Countries that can offer something that is in demand by the rest of the world, they can say, you can like me or you can not like me, but you need me.
Yeah.
And Singapore has had to fashion a way to be needed by other countries. One of the things that we sort of built is an economic and financial center. There's a lot of investment that comes through Singapore and sits in Singapore. It's a great place to do business. So that's hopefully one way that we stay relevant and needed by the global community. What do you need for that? Obviously, you need to have a stable place, you need to have an efficient place, and you need to have a safe place. So all the things that individuals say, I love Singapore because it's so clean and safe and efficient, if you multiply that by a bigger factor, that's the same things that companies and investors would like to see in Singapore. So we kind of need to keep that going, unless we suddenly discover oil, under Sentosa, which I don't think is going to happen. But that's a threat too, right? There are other countries who are looking and saying, if they can do that, we can do that too. There's Dubai, Hong Kong used to be a competitor. There might be other countries who will pop up and say, I want a piece of that kind of action as well. Again, so that's potentially one of the things that I feel Singapore needs to continue to try to develop. But that also is potentially a big challenge and one vulnerability that we have, because there's no way to to force people to stay here. You know, money will go wherever money wants to go, right? And investors as well.
Singapore might be perfect, but as a YouTuber you can choose where to stay because you literally need only a phone and a laptop to make videos. If you ever consider starting a YouTube channel to share your knowledge and help others while making a side income, I have a great first step for you. I'm running an online workshop where you will discover your unique niche along with its profit potential, determine the fastest way to get your first 1,000 subscribers, and receive a roadmap to create your own project using YouTube as a vehicle to generate passive income. The cost of the workshop is minimal compared to the results you can achieve. Click the link below and sign up for the workshop.
Sometimes I ask, like foreigners when interview ask about Lee Kuan Yew, like what do you know about Lee Kuan Yew and what he done for the country. What do you think for you as a Singaporean and for someone who knows like history, what are the biggest, let's say, achievements or some policies that actually not super obvious, not like HDB or anti-corruption campaign, something like not very obvious but super important for the country that he's done?
For me, it's two particular aspects. I think one was maybe not a campaign or a policy, but it was an aspect of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's leadership, and it was this supreme confidence in himself and in supreme confidence and pride in the country that he was building and leading. If you imagine that you were just starting to come into a leadership position of a very small country that had just gained independence, that had no position on the global stage yet, economically or any sort of way, that had no military, that had no way to defend itself. At the same time, if you have seen Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's speeches and the way that he spoke on the international stage, there was not exaggerated bravado or anything like that, but there was a lot of confidence. There was confidence in himself and confidence in what Singapore was or could be. I think if he didn't have that confidence or belief, he would never have been driven to build a country that was, you know, as successful as Singapore has become. So when I look at that, I was thinking, wow, you know, sometimes when we think in the sports context, for example, Singapore is not a big sporting country, and you think, oh, you know, how are we ever going to make it to the global stage on a consistent basis? And we think back, well, you know, Mr. Lee, when he started out also, we weren't any global leader in anything, but he had a belief and confidence and he said, let's go and do it. So I think that kind of spirit is something that is not captured in the policy, it's not written down in the constitution or anything like that, but it was something that he had as a leader, and as the founding leader, I think a lot of Singapore was shaped in that way. Other parts of things that I think were very useful, maybe we don't really think very much about, is we hear a lot about the economic success, the infrastructure, housing policy, social policy, economic policy, education systems and stuff. But at the same time, you know, Mr. Lee and his government and his leadership team, they also realized that when you build a society, you have to build all components. You have to build the hard, important stuff, but you also need the softer things to give balance. So of course we know about the garden city in the garden concept, to build in a lot of nature interspersed with the urban development. First of all, we don't have the space, but at the same time, the way Singapore was designed was not that urban area here and then nature area there. We don't have enough space to cut it up like way. So everything is sort of interspersed. You have really nice parks and nature reserves that are not too far away from where people are living or working, and you see greenery everywhere. And this is something I think for sure Singaporeans take for granted, because if you go to other big, very urban cities, you realize very quickly that even though Singapore is urbanized, there's a lot of green, there's a lot of nature. Okay, some of it is a little bit man-made, but it allows people to have a certain connection besides concrete and brick and stone and buildings. And I think that helps to really balance out. When you have a very fast-paced life, you have a very, intense lifestyle, you need to have that sort of thing. You
had the chance to meet Barack Obama and Michelle Obama.
Yeah,
What was your impressions of him?
Well, this was back in, I think, 2019, just before COVID. And he came to Singapore and did a 1-hour in-conversation, session. And so I had a chance to moderate that. And before that, of course, you have to prepare. So I watched a lot of his interviews.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of his speeches. I wanted to make sure that in the interview, I didn't ask him questions that he had answered before. that he would just say the same old kind of answer.
Yeah.
Which is hard because people who do all these things, they have answers prepared, right? Because they've done it so many times. But when I spoke to people in his team, and I said, what should I expect with, Mr. President? And they said, you'll find out very quickly that what you see is what you get. He's really like that. So we had a little bit of time to interact with him before going out. And the way he was, the way he talked, the way he interacted with us and people around. And then when we walked out on stage, it was exactly the same. There was no transition. You didn't suddenly, I turn on my public voice or my stage persona. And I think that that kind of authenticity and sincerity is very rare in politicians, but also in leadership in a lot of other ways. And I think genuine, sincere, authentic leadership is a very rare commodity. So that's what really struck me. When we were on stage and we were doing sort of the interview, he was, of course, he's very well spoken and intelligent, but when he saw the opportunity, he would take the piss out of me a little bit, he would give me a little hard time about stuff, with a good sense of humor, and of course everybody sort of laughed. So what you see is what you get, but that kind of authentic leadership, I think, is very desirable in leaders, but to a certain extent, it's also something that not everybody has it, right? If you are sincere, authentic, but you're also an asshole, then that's not gonna transfer well.
Are there leaders assholes?
Oh, I'm sure there are, because in society, in life, you need some guys who are the tough guys to do some of the dirty work, and you need some guys who maybe are the cheerleaders, to sort of rah-rah and talk about all the softer stuff. You see that in any organization. You see that in government, different roles of different people. But the top guy has to be somebody, I think, who can pull everything together. So it has to be combination of all the different type of skill sets, authentic leadership, sincerity, integrity, and at the same time also empathy and care for others. It's really hard, I think I would say leadership is not hard. Good leadership is very, very hard. In today's world, if you don't have good leadership, whether you're a company, an NGO, organization, a country, a government, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think you can see, especially with today's world, right, where you have more decentralized type of work environment, work from home. Leaders you don't feel the impact of good leadership because it's all sort of dispersed, and you don't have the contact and interface with the people, leadership and the team. I hate this work from home concept. So on most of my teams, everybody comes in. Right?
Yeah.
I hope they like it, but whether they like it or not, that's the way we do it.
And here, actually, so we are sitting in the fencing club, you can call it. You just opened it
3 months ago.
Is it a big team working here?
Currently a team of 4 of us. So a small team. We are trying a new concept. Legends Fencing Club is the only club in Singapore that's 100% dedicated and focused on adult fencers. A lot of people who know me said when they heard about this, they said, you just made this for yourself to kind of enjoy, right? And that's a little bit of the reason.
Do you have any regrets in life?
I spread myself a little bit thin. I like to do a lot of different things in different areas. And I have friends who say, why do you do this to yourself? And I say, I'm not really doing it to myself. If you ask me to list out all the things I enjoy doing in life, this would be a list.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to do it and earn some money, pay the bills, to work with good people and to build good teams and to achieve certain visions that I have. So maybe not a regret, but I sometimes wonder how things would be if I had focused on one thing. Could that have been much bigger? But I realized early on in my life, I like to do many things at one go. The first sport I really liked was triathlon, which is 3 sports. Then I got into fencing, and then I got into modern pentathlon in university, which is 5 sports. And I at one stage I was running a company, working at a think tank, working at a media company, and was also a nominated member of parliament, and I was just doing everything at one go. So I realized that in terms of my personality and character, I just like to do a lot of different things at one time. But it's not a regret, but I do sometimes wonder, if I just focus on one thing, Could I have been like world class in one thing rather than just doing lots of different things at one go?
Yeah.
But I'm having a lot of fun, so yeah, maybe it's not so much regret, but just a question I ask myself sometimes. I wonder what it would be like.
What's the meaning of life for you?
For me, I think the meaning of life is to realize that the world is more than just you, and that as somebody on this planet, regardless of what religious belief you have or spiritual belief you have maybe a duty or a role to do good things, and not just do good things for yourself, but for as many people around you as you can. That to me is the meaning of life, to be able to have done something for something more than myself, and hopefully something positive and something good.
Let me show you some magic. If you click on this video, I will disappear and reappear again. Let's try it. 3, 2, 1.